I don't limit myself to one style. I love one-liner jokes. I love stories. I like clever, smart and written material. And then also I'm not opposed to a dirty joke once in a while. And um, if you've got all the tools in your bag, why not use them all?
Comedian Tom Rhodes has built a career by betting on curiosity over comfort. From U.S. comedy clubs to stages around the world, he's known for fearless honesty, sharp observations, and deeply personal storytelling. A global favorite who's hosted TV, he's voiced iconic characters, and he's toured relentlessly, which we'll talk about. Tom joins me today on Talk About Las Vegas to talk about comedy, travel, resilience, living life on your own terms. He's performing in the Comedy Cellar at the Rio All Suite Hotel and Casino at 7 and 9:30 through February 8th. And for ticket information, go to thecomedycellar.com. For everything about Tom, go to tomrhodes.net and follow him on Instagram, Facebook, X, and YouTube. And don't forget his podcast, Tom Rhodes Smart Camp, as well. Tom, welcome to the show.
Hey, Ira, how are you?
Good, doing very well, thank you. Do you remember by any chance the first time you performed in Las Vegas?
Wow. Um, Yeah, it's interesting. My father loved Las Vegas, and he wanted me to play in Vegas for years. And I kind of, years ago, Las Vegas has changed, went through so many transformations, but I
Sure.
believe the very first time I ever played in Vegas was at the old Laugh Stop at the Trop, which was at the Tropicana. And my father actually, he's deceased now. That's why I bring this up, but he actually got to come and see me there. And I remember like how proud he was that I was playing in Las Vegas. And then that room eventually became Brad Garrett's
Right.
and he refurbished it and he made this brilliant dressing room like for the comedians and then that was the Laugh Factory after Brad Garrett's moved over to the MGM. But there's great Las Vegas history in that room. It was originally Rodney Dangerfield's,
Correct.
and some of those HBO Young Comedian specials were filmed there.
Yeah, it has a long history. So that's great. You remember that. Your dad was instrumental also in your comedy career because he took you to a club in DC where you saw your uncle, if memory serves. Well, my memory doesn't serve, but my knowledge serves. It's probably better. But that's when you first were introduced in a way to the world of stand-up comedy.
Well, my father, he was an amazing human being. I mean, like flawed like any of us, but he flew helicopters in Vietnam and he was shot down. Everyone in the helicopter died except for him and his co-pilot, who the co-pilot was knocked unconscious, and my father saved him, got like a bunch of medals for it. He survived the crash, but anyway, when he eventually died, he's buried in Arlington National Cemetery, which is for, decorated war heroes. But my father had this really brilliant sense of humor and loved stand-up comedy. And he loved Richard Pryor. So my family is originally from Washington, D.C. And I remember driving around Washington, D.C. with my father. And I was a little kid. I would stand next to him and I had my arm on his shoulders. Nobody used seatbelts back then. I was probably like 5 years old. And and I just remember my father's shoulders shaking when he would laugh, and how brilliant that was. So stand-up comedy was really revered in our household. And my uncle did open mic night comedy in Washington, D.C. 1977, no, 78. I was 11 years old. And my father took me to see my uncle perform. And the stage was next to the entrance and the show was already in progress. And we walked in, and I had a Washington Redskins jacket on. And the comedian who was on stage pulled me on stage, and he interviewed me like I was the coach of the Redskins. And and I was just like a little kid, and I just, gave bashful, dopey one-word answers, yes and no. But I'll never forget that moment standing on that stage and seeing all those happy people with their heads thrown back in laughter and all the teeth in their mouth. And I know I've romanticized this vision, but Washington, D.C. is a very diverse city. So I just remember, there was like every flavor of humanity was in the audience and they were laughing together. And I just, from that moment onward, I never wanted to do anything else with my life. I wanted to be a comedian. I thought, when you were on stage, you were talking to the world. So,
Oh
uh,
yeah, you are. There's also another connection to Las Vegas. So your
and how many fathers bring their 11-year-old kids to a bar?
your dad loved Las Vegas, and then another connection with Las Vegas, which was important to your life and career, was Jay Leno, who performs in Las Vegas as well, because Jay Leno gave you some great insight in terms of comedy as well.
Well, it's really interesting that you bring that up. Well, because I just found something from that night and that you're talking about. So there was this jazz club in Orlando. Actually, it was in Winter Park. My family moved to Orlando when I was to the Orlando area when I was 12. And so like big name comedians would play at this jazz club called Cheek to Cheek. And I wasn't old enough to get in, but I was such a comedy fan. I wanted to go like just be near the energy of it. And so there was an exit door, like the stage backstage door, and I just thought I'd try and listen. But the opening act came out. He was like a guitar act, and the door swings open, and I put my foot in the door. And then after that guy walked away, me and my friend, we stepped in, and it was just this really like small space, only like 3 or 4 feet from that door to the curtain that went onto the stage, and there was a step up. And I watched the show, Jay Leno's show, through the crack in the curtain, and I could actually see through his legs because he was elevated, and I could see the people in the front row. And I've worked with Jay a few times in LA in recent years, and I told him, you were a dangerous, edgy political comedian
Mhm.
in the '80s, and he was like, "No, I wasn't." I'm like, yeah, he was. He did. He did political stuff. He took a shot at everybody. He always had great new material. But the thing you're talking about, so I just started doing stand up. I was 17 years old, and I asked him if he could, what advice he would give me. And he said that if you're serious about doing stand up comedy, you should live in New York or Los Angeles. So when I was 20 years old, I moved to New York City, and I wasn't ready yet. And it was like the worst year of my life. It turned out to be horrible advice. But hold on,
Tom is
I was
going to get
I was
something to
looking
show us
through.
something. Here
I
we
was
go.
look. I was looking. I've been. I've been looking through boxes, and I'm a real pack rat. I save things. So it's funny that you mentioned that. So from that night, I found the
Oh, look at
ticket
that. Look at
from
that.
cheek to cheek.
For
Look, it was.
our listeners won't know, won't see it, but our viewers will, that it's a ticket cheek to cheek with Jay Leno.
It says $12.50. So this was April 1st, 1985. So I graduated high school like June 7th, 1985. So I was still a senior in high school.
You still have it. You have to frame that, mount it on that wall behind
But
you.
but I didn't pay for this. I must have just grabbed it
Oh,
because
I understand it, but it's still
I snuck in.
symbolic of the
But
connection with you and Jay.
and then this is
Oh, an autograph to
and it said,
Tom.
"Yo,
See you
Tom."
in Hollywood, Jay. Absolutely amazing.
Amazing. I
Yeah.
just I just found this like yesterday.
So
So
there
the
you go. Look
story
at
that
the
you're
time.
talking about happened on April 1st, 1985, and I just found this.
So you got to frame it, hang it up on the wall.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Oh, no, good. Well, your connection with comedy is interesting too, from my point of view, because there's the road less taken and the road less traveled. The way I see you is the road more traveled,
Yeah.
because you've, as I mentioned in the opening, you just perform all over the world. You were in the Netherlands for a while, and you're you just keep moving and traveling, and you really enjoy it. And you've done many TV shows and podcasts from all around the world. You did a TV show, well, more than one, overseas as well. But what kept you in a way not separate from other comedians that wouldn't do that? What was in you that caused you to do that? If that's the way of
Um,
phrasing it. I mean,
um,
I think it's a positive thing, but you don't normally see that. What I'm trying to get at is you
well,
normally don't
you know
see
what?
that in
Now it's
comedians.
easier for comedians. Now there's gigs around. There's a lot of stuff around the world,
Right,
and you can contact people through the social media platforms and things like that
right.
or whatever. But um, when I started in the late 90s, so I had a sitcom on NBC from 1996 to 1997. So when that was finished, the Mr. Rhodes show, I had a big bag of cash. And I looked at that money as my NBC artist grant. So I moved back to New York City. I got a rock star apartment in the Wall Street area because I had lived there like a dog when I was 20. I always swore if I ever got any money, I'd live there with style. And in retrospect, now I wish I would have been smarter and bought some property with that money. But I also, a good friend of mine, Rich Hall, if you remember him,
Hmm.
he was in with London and he was playing over there, and he thought that I had like intelligent comedy and that I would do very well in England. So I started making trips. So I moved back to New York just to focus on stand up because the sitcom didn't work out. And then I started making systematic trips over to London. And my friend coached me. You don't go to the best clubs first. You go to the peripheral rooms, get your sea legs, find out what references work, what don't work. And then once you got a tight little set, then you go to the best clubs in London, which is what I did. So I got in with the Comedy Store in London. There was Jongleurs in Camden and up the creek in Greenwich. And once I, so then I started playing in London regularly, and I was going over there, and then that led to gigs around England, and then also to gigs all around Europe and then the world.
And you had a Dutch late night talk show.
Yeah. So I playing in Amsterdam, I fell in love with a Dutch woman, and then I moved there, and I was really doing a ton of gigs all over Europe, and I was starting to, doing comedy festivals in Australia and playing in Hong Kong. There used to be a great uh, English language comedy tour in China, and just was playing all over the world, and I was I was drinking heavily and partying, having a good time. So the Dutch woman that I had moved there for, she wanted to settle down and have kids. So she broke up with me. And and rightfully so. I wasn't ready to have a family. And I was just about to move back to the United States when these people from this Dutch television network were looking for an American to host an American style late night talk show on Dutch TV. And they had a so comedy club in Amsterdam called Toomler. They had I don't know, it was like 10, 15 people were on the show and they chose me. So I got to stay in this little country that I had fallen in love with and host my own late night talk show. And that was incredible. And it was great being single in Amsterdam and then I got to raise the partying to a higher level because I was like locally famous
That
and
always helps, yes. Do you find though when you mix with other comedians and comics here in the United States, do you find there's a slight cultural difference because of your experience and your knowledge of being in various countries other than the United States?
no, and I think a lot of comedians have played around the world now,
Right.
but a lot of friends of mine I've talked to, they'll set up tours and they'll just go like one night in Berlin, one night in Prague,
Mhm.
one night in Brussels, wherever, where, I was always looking for an experience.
Right.
I like to read books about countries and their best writers and
Well,
just,
I guess that, Tom, that's to my point is that when you're in your Dutch experience, you were there for a while. You weren't just doing it one night and then going to say Germany and then to
yeah.
France. So your experience is so much different than most comedians who even tour. They do one-nighters here, there, and everywhere. But obviously, it was great for you. I was just curious whether there was a cultural connection with other comedians who didn't have that kind of experience that you had.
No, I know, but a lot of people have come to me for information on contact information
Yeah.
for how to get in with clubs and
Right.
different places around the world,
If I had to force you under not torture, but just extreme force to label your comedy, would you come up with a name for it?
Uh,
I'll take torture off the table, just a regular question. I'll take force off the table. Just
I
a,
don't know. I mean, because I don't limit myself to one style. I love one-liner jokes. I love stories. I like clever, smart and written material. And then also, I'm not opposed to a dirty joke once in a while. And if you've got all the tools in your bag, why not use them all? But there's times where. Like I'm about to put out my third clean comedy album. So I think I've put out 7 or 8 albums total, and then and this will be my third clean album, and it's like I don't know, like it's 55 minutes long, an hour long, something like that. So um, there's a club in Hermosa Beach called the Comedy and Magic Club, and they like you to work clean there. So
Dude,
I like to.
Jay Leno works there a
Jay
lot.
Leno plays there all the time. Yeah. And he's there like every Sunday night for the last 30 years, even when he had the Tonight Show. So I like using that comedic muscle in my brain to think of clean jokes there, like my mother's very religious, and uh, she likes, she prefers those kind of jokes from me, but
Right.
um, I play all over the world and like, excuse me, sometimes an audience in Vegas or London or New York, like uh, doing an entirely clean set isn't going to work in some of these places, where you're. So I like being able to do it all, and also I've lived a full life, so I have a lot of incredible stories,
Mhm.
love stories, near death stories, you know, all kinds of stuff.
Do you ever get feedback from the audience that helps you define for yourself your approach? What I mean by that is you're obviously a storyteller, a comedian, a well-educated traveler. Do you get some feedback from the audience in different places that you perform that helps define for you what your approach is on stage?
No,
Well, that's
I,
fine.
you know, sometimes, but like, you go through different things in your life. I remember when I moved to Amsterdam, the Dutch can be very direct and like I call them left-handed compliments. They'll say something without a filter, like where Americans usually were like pretty polite and like, but I remember I moved to Amsterdam and I was on stage and I was talking about like how in love I was with this woman I had moved there for. And after the show, this Dutch woman comes up to me and she said, "I've seen you before, and I preferred it before when you were a little negative." Because you have to remember that at any given time, more of the world is suffering and going through heartbreak than they are happy and in love. So I don't think as much of the audience could relate to a happy Tom Rhodes as they could a troubled. So like, but you're like, come on, like I wouldn't say that was helpful. It just was memorable.
Yes, just
Like,
trying to get you down another road. I was just
but
thinking.
hey, all she had to do was wait a year, and then I was back
Yeah,
to.
exactly. Yeah. I was just thinking of a title for your next comedy album. Maybe it's too late for this one. Maybe over the next one is On the Roads Again.
I like
What do you
that.
think?
There's been articles that were written about me that, oh, there's always a play on Road Scholar,
Right.
on the roads again.
So,
I'm proud of my name, so I like that.
yeah, it is. A lot of people think it's Roads. It's Rhods. So yeah, it's very important.
Rhodes, like the island of Rhodes, like the Rhodes Scholar.
Exactly. We mentioned earlier you're going to be at the Comedy Cellar through February 8th at 7 and 9:30, but you also have another gig coming up. Why don't you mention that one?
March 2nd through the 8th, I'm going to be at the brand new Laugh Factory, which is reopening, and it's going to be at the Horseshoe Casino.
Yeah,
So I'm
people are
really
looking
excited
forward to it.
about that. I love the Comedy Cellar is amazing. I play there several times a year, and then the Laugh Factory when it was at the Tropicana, I played there several times a year,
Right.
and
Harry
I'm
Basil's
real
operation. Yeah.
Harry Basil's just such a beautiful human being. And I mean, and so is Esty, who runs the Comedy Cellar. Just
Hmm.
I've been blessed to have a lot of great supporters in the comedy business, and Harry's such a good guy, and I'm really excited about performing at that new Laugh Factory March
Yeah, so
2nd.
our listeners and viewers get a chance to see you in two different locations and two different
And
dates.
and the Comedy Cellar is exactly like, and they've recreated the room brilliantly.
Mhm.
So the famous club is in Greenwich Village on McDougal Street, and um, and it's New York style. Everybody does 15 minutes, and there's a host. So that's how the Vegas room is, and it's actually really great because I'm working with other headliners. So it's great. I work with brilliant comedians that sometimes I otherwise wouldn't get to see, and it's precisely recreated like the Greenwich Village room. But at the Laugh Factory, I'll be headlining, so I'll be doing like 45 minutes a night.
You have a very distinctive voice. Clearly, you've done voiceover, as we mentioned,
No,
voiceover.
I would like to. I've only done a little voiceover. I would love to do more
You
voiceover.
should. You had just had, it has that unique quality about you. So,
If you have any connections, Ira,
okay, we'll discuss it afterwards.
yeah.
So,
No, I
I,
would love to do voiceover stuff.
I wanted to get back to the lady that told you you should be more depressed when you're on stage in the Dutch on the Dutch stage. By the way, when you were dating that lady that you ended up marrying, when you went out on a date, did you go Dutch or how did that work? Go
The
Dutch?
Dutch actually do that. The Dutch women will pay for their half,
Very
and
nice.
um, I never realized what um, power that is because then there's no obligation from
Absolutely.
them
Right.
to kiss you or give you any affection because they've paid for their, there were many dates I went on with women in Amsterdam, and after the dinner was finished, I watched them bicycle away.
But at least they were honest about it, Tom. So
Yeah, I mean it's cool and it's not. Like I dated a woman from Africa recently, and that Dutch shit is not cool. The man pays, you know.
yeah, it depends on the culture. So there you have it. Well, when you look at comics today, especially younger comics that come to you for advice, what do you tell them in terms of their approach? Is there anything that you can share with them that you think will help? Because obviously every career is different, every experience is different. Yours is totally different from most typical comedians because of your travel and all of the different things that you've done. Is there something that you would give advice to any, maybe they're listening or watching
Well, like
too?
the standard things that I'll tell people are the best pieces of advice that I was ever given. Um, Tell them the joke, show them the joke. If you act something out, even if it's just with your face, it's 1,000 times funnier. When I started out in Florida, I worked with Brian Regan a lot. Brian Regan's one of my oldest friends in comedy,
I believe
and
he's based in Las Vegas
he's
too.
based in Vegas, and he's the personification of that advice because he acts everything out, and it's like, and he's brilliant, and that's so if you act things out, it's funnier, and then try and try and uh, step in every part of the stage. Don't just stand there with the microphone in the stand, you know?
I've heard that about you that you like to touch all the four corners and
Yeah.
move around.
Yeah, I move around.
All right, all right.
Yeah.
Well, I think doesn't that help you interact with the audience because you're moving around? If you just stand there, although there are comedians and are very successful ones that do that. I'm thinking of Stephen Wright, who doesn't really
Yeah,
give
and
that
Mitch
much.
Hedberg used to stand there, and that's the thing, like about giving somebody advice. Like their talent could be brilliant one-liners, and then other people are brilliant storytellers. So, whatever your organic, authentic self is, just I think vulnerability is the bravest act a comedian could do is to be a little vulnerable and reveal a little bit about yourself, and then hit them with the surprise ending at the end.
Do
You
you
know.
think that works? Because we talk a lot about the social media age, and what really works is authenticity, to use an overused word. On stage, you just talked about being vulnerable, which is being authentic, a little bit vulnerable. Does that help the audience relate to the comedian separate from the likability factor? Because we always hear that
Well,
if
I mean, like when you're talking, like, and it goes back to what that woman said after the show in Amsterdam.
yeah,
Like, I think, if you're talking about like some difficult thing that you went through, that's why like heartbreak is so relatable. Like, people feel that when you're being vulnerable by talking about something that hurt you or affected you deeply. I think people, they really latch onto that, and what I've found through the years is that people remember stories affect them more powerfully and stay with people better than the most brilliant written one-liner.
because it connects on a human level.
I think so,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah. Of all the material that you've written, is there one story that means the most to you that you always bring up in your performance?
I mean, there's a lot.
There may
There's
be more than one, but I was just thinking maybe there was like one that meant so much to you that it's part of your vulnerability, or at least it's part of what you
no,
know the
because
audience
it
will react.
changes. I talked about this uh this the story where I kind of got dumped on my birthday in Barcelona a few years ago. And I was telling that for a little while, but it was difficult to relive this story every night because it genuinely hurt me. So
Yeah,
to
yeah,
retell the
exactly.
so to retell the story, I had to relive the pain, you know?
And
So
you're not a masochist by trade, so you don't want
yeah.
to do that. Yeah.
So I used to tell the story about almost drowning in Thailand, which was really intense thing that happened to me years ago. The primary story for me changes every, few years.
Is there a common element because you travel so much and perform so much around the world? Is there a common element to humor or comedy among audiences, even if they don't speak English in another country or they
Yeah,
speak
I
some
mean,
English?
because I mean, like as Americans, we always had the advantage because people watch our TVs and
Right.
movies and TV shows all over the world. But now, with social media, people are even more connected. So um, yeah, I think people, it's the vulnerable stories, it's the real stories. That's what reaches people and lasts the most. Like when I was younger, I tried to be edgy and political because I loved George Carlin and Bill Hicks, but now I don't go anywhere near that stuff because number one, it has a short shelf life,
It does.
you know? So like
It
you
does.
you could write a brilliant line about something and then it's, a week later it's forgotten,
Yeah.
So um to talk about your personal life or even like kind of social things that how they affect you like that's for me better than I mean I think and and politics like it really turns people off now. Like I don't want anything to do with it. I've been given this gift to make people laugh. When I was younger I thought, I mean I was into whatever. Um, I just thought a comedian should talk about important things, and now I'm like, fuck that. I want to get laughs. I want to make everybody happy, and for my own personal well-being, I try to shut out as much of the news as I can.
Before I let you go, tell us a little bit about the podcast.
It's funny you bring that up because I haven't put it out in a little while. It's called Smart Camp. I interviewed people around the world in my travels, and then also I'm a big heavy reader. I'm a voracious reader, and so I would I'd read a book and do a little book report on it. I love knowledge nuggets, so a lot of episodes. I just always wanted to enrich people with wisdom and knowledge. So I try and I'm trying to focus that all on my stand-up comedy performances. And there's so many podcasts now.
True.
Um, and it's a lot of work to put one out every week. So I'm focusing my energy on some other things. I wrote a limited series um, pilot script with a young female comedian recently, and working on a animated movie idea. I've written the story. I need to turn it into script form. So I'm always working on projects. I'm always being creative makes me happy, you know?
A great way to leave it. Being
Yeah.
creative makes me happy. I love it. My guest has been Tom Rhodes. He's performing in the Comedy Cellar at the Rio All Suite Hotel and Casino at 7 and 9:30 through February 8th, and also the Horseshoe on the dates on that, Tom.
March 2nd to the 8th.
Okay, and for ticket
Wow.
information on the Comedy Cellar, go to comedycellar.com. For everything about Tom, you can go to tomrhodes.net. Somehow he didn't get .com, but he's got .net, so that's okay. tomrhodes.net, and follow him on Instagram, Facebook, X, and YouTube. And
At
Tom,
underscore Tom Rhodes, Rhodes.
perfect. Tom, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thanks, Ira. Appreciate it.
See you next time.